Yes, all the content, all the content! Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they. And in today's video, I can't believe this, I'm starting a tag. I discussed it with a few other creators on WitchTube, and we've decided that this is gonna be useful. This is gonna be useful, which is an important thing. And this is the Witchcraft books version of Snog, Marry, Avoid, which aptly then I've called SnogMarryHex. Such a comedian. I am making it for witchcraft beginners books, but do feel free to do it for any kind of witchcraft book that you think is relevant. For advanced witchcraft, for folk witchcraft, the sky is the limit. Feel free to do this tag and tag me in it, like mention me so that I can come and see your video, and I'll make a playlist actually of SnogMarryHex. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi, which is an alternative to Patreon that takes less from creators. And on there you can do a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, all my income from tarot readings goes directly to Kuchas to Gaza, who are part of the mutual aid groups that helps Palestinian people evacuate to Egypt. And if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. I have decided to make this video based on witchcraft beginners books because when I did the review of Ari the Oak Witch, Spellcraft and Spellwork book, I vaguely mentioned, people noticed that I mentioned, and I said, if you are starting out, start with this book, because if by any chance you have the misfortune, like I did, to have your first witchcraft book being Sky Alexander's The Modern Guide to Witchcraft, that is dangerous. Don't do that. And I know how popular that is, and I know how usually you see it around, the cover always pops up. It's, I think, one of the most famous one on Amazon, but it is actually dangerous, and it's gonna be our hex, kill, avoid here, but all in good time. The first one, the Snog, as you can tell, is going to be the book where I get to it, it gives me everything that I need. In that moment, it's very satisfactory, and it's also concise and succinct. It's a Snog, it's not a night of passion. It's intense in the moment and it's valid, and it's indeed Spellcraft and Spellwork by Ari. If you want more information specifically about it, again, I've made the video review of it, which is something that I don't usually do, but that was that good. The beautiful thing about something that needs to be about beginners, and so you have this interest in witchcraft, but maybe you know absolutely nothing. Maybe you've just seen the witchcore tag on TikTok or on Instagram, and you're like, but what do actual, real, modern-day witches do? Spellcraft and Spellwork tells you that, basically. Tells you the foundations of where modern paganism and witchcraft comes from, tells you where the information comes from, if it's sourced from anywhere. So something that I mentioned in the review, a lot of books will mention this kind of breathing techniques that should align your body, your oral and astral body, everything together. What nobody else mentioned but Ari, even in just a succinct book that is like 100 pages, is that the square breath technique actually comes from yoga. So it's part of the Pranayama yoga about breathing. And I think it's very important to know where things come from and not just extrapolating them. Because in that way, at least for me, they cement themselves in my head. Taking just an information that I don't know where it comes from, I don't know the meaning of it, and I just basically have to learn it by memory. Somehow I think that doesn't sprout synapses. So it's not connected to anything. It's just something that I know by memory and I can just as easily lose. When I understand the context, when I understand where it comes from, when I understand all those things and then why it's been adapted in a certain way in my practice, it has all those connections and it makes it easier to understand the world at large, basically, which I think is very important in witchcraft, because otherwise we go through the motions but we don't quite understand what we're doing. And if we don't understand, I'm not sure that we can direct our energy or our intention towards something that we don't see or understand the pathway that it takes. Does it make sense? I'm on fire today! So yeah, bringing it back to why would I snog Ari's books? Because it's so complete. It's a hug that takes you by the hand and shows you, okay, you know nothing, I'll make you understand the context in which we're working, and by the end of the book you can make your own spell for whatever you want, and it will likely very much work. And what else do you need from a beginner's book, really? And then there's the Merry, and the Merry kind of book is the book that I keep going back to. So we kind of have this relationship, I trust them, I go back to open it, and I know that I can trust the information there, and I know that information will build upon itself, and I will understand more the more I grow. And The Psychic Witch by Matt Oren. Thankfully I got The Psychic Witch couple of months into my practice. I think it was out the year before I started to practice, and if everybody's talking about it, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's good, but in that case, it's good. One thing that sometimes slightly frustrates me of Psychic Witch is that Matt has a very clear idea of his powers and has an easier time talking through them, as if it's easier to people to find them out. It's not that easy for me, so sometimes I'm like, I don't know, how am I feeling this? I don't know, how do I feel this? I don't know. But it's because probably I have a lot of noirs rather than clairs, which Matt talks about. The Psychic Witch is basically a huge compendium of exercises to develop all this kind of psychic abilities. And I know that I can always go back to it, because it doesn't matter the topic, Matt has it covered and likely has an exercise for it. So whether it's about understanding how to center your energy, which is still a bit of a mystery for me, talks about breath, has specific exercises and spells about consecrating tarot, about enhancing your psychic abilities, which actually I need to do more often. It's a spell that you do on the full moon, and if I were to put it in my calendar, I would remember it. And there's basically this spell that you do, which is an exercise, really. You do it every full moon, and hopefully it brings more of your intuition and psychic abilities. I am still hoping. But it has all this incredible wealth of knowledge, and any kind of topic that I want to go in, it will have it covered. I know that by the end of the book, because I skimmed through, it has a lot of planetary magic as well, which is my soft spot. But I don't know, I think it might be my autistic brain that loves to follow specific order of things. So I never felt so far like skipping exercises to get ahead and then do something else. And also Matt makes a point that it is useful for the exercises to build upon each other. So because of that, I know that by the end there's planetary magic. I hope to get there one day, but I haven't yet, because there's a lot from before that I haven't managed to go past in the exercises. Then there's a lot to be said about the fact that I have a very high and strict standard for the way that I do those exercises and for the result that I get from them. I think that might also not help. But going back to why is this the book that I would marry, because I always go back to it, because I can trust what he says, because Matt is a very powerful psychic witch, like there's no way around it. And if there's a way for me to get any way close to that kind of understanding of the world and power, is going to be through this book. And I know that I can trust it. And maybe the one thing that I should learn how to do is how to trust myself while I work with this book. And isn't that the point of marriage, that you develop a relationship and you transform your position over time towards each other so that you can still be halves of the same whole, but growing in different shapes? Fuck, I'm profound today. Why would I want to kill / avoid / hex Sky Alexander's Modern Guide to Witchcraft? So, as I said before, it was the first book that I went to because it was in the title, The Modern Guide to Witchcraft. What else do I need? This will tell me everything. And in hindsight, I realized that it's the quintessential colonial white feminism idea of I pick and choose from everywhere. I don't care about explaining where this comes from. And you'll have a feeling that you have a vague understanding of everything, regardless of culture, regardless of tradition, regardless of anything. There's some Wicca stuff, there's some folk magic, there's some ceremonial magic, but at no point Sky explains that those things come from those traditions. And it's what I said before, whereas Ari's book explains to you the context in which you're doing something, Sky just repeats things, and you can acquire them without understanding the context that they come from, and that, when you do magic, can be dangerous. And I am saying that from personal experience. Why is that? Because of my need for structure that comes very much from autism, one of the first things that I heard about and I wanted to learn more about was casting a circle. So you create this space that is protected from the outside, is this bubble that protects you while you do magic and enhances your magic. And Sky has the standard, I think, Wicca kind of thing. You go around, you call the elements, and then you dispel your circle once you're done, and you dismiss the elements and the guardians of the watchtowers, and that's all. Okay. After that, she also has a point that says, oh, you know what? If you don't have time to cast a full circle, just do this. You get in the middle of your work area, and you just say, before me, Raphael, behind me, Gabriel, on my right hand, Michael, and on my left hand, Uriel. And you're calling the 4 angels of the directions to protect you. If anyone that is watching knows anything about ceremonial magic, will have immediately understood that this is an extracted bit of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, of Golden Dawn and ceremonial magic fame. The LBRP is a very structured process. You do not extract and pick and choose what you like and expect it to work anyway. So, to tell a beginner, if you don't have time to cast a full circle, just call the angels and they will come. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. And I have done that mistake. Not even a month into my practice, I had picked a time to do a certain kind of spell, and I was running late, so I just did that. And what happened with that spell, I was doing it with Raven. And Raven, as I mentioned before, has more of an attitude towards the subtle world. In the room that we were at the time, there was a mirror. In my head, I cast a circle, so we were protected. Of course, the protection comes from the guardians of the watchtower, the spirits of the elements, or indeed the angels if you've done the LPRP correctly. None of those things were done, so the circle wasn't protected at all. At some point when we think that the spell is done, we sit up from the floor, and sitting up, Raven was in front of the mirror. As they were sitting up, they immediately went down and was like, no, we're not sitting up because there is something that doesn't want me to look in the mirror because I would see them. And I was like, come again? What? So we communicated with this entity through the pendulum which we had, which Raven communicated with. And by all means, they seemed to be just a curious spirit, despite the fact that they looked a bit scary for how Raven described them to me. And no, they were just curious. They saw that we were casting stuff and they wanted to come see. But they were in the room. Why? In hindsight, I realized because there was an unprotected circle. It doesn't matter that Sky decided to say, oh, if you're short on time, just call the angels. Girl, no, that's dangerous. That is an unprotected circle because that invocation is part of a larger ritual that is the LBRP. If you haven't started the LBRP with the Kabbalistic cross, with cleansing yourself, with all that stuff that is part of the LBRP, calling the angels like that, do fuck all. It's not gonna happen and you're gonna be unprotected. You don't say that to a beginner. After that, we had to cleanse the house, head to toe, in such detail. We had to seal off all mirrors. I almost didn't want to do spell for months after that. As a beginner, it was a traumatic experience. And to think that that is such a beginner's book that people go to and trust, because as beginners, maybe we haven't read a lot yet, so we don't know any better. it is insane to me that she just thought about putting that there without considering the larger context that that was extrapolated from. You do not do that. The LBRP is a beginning and an end for a reason. When years later, this year actually, I realized that that piece came from the LBRP and I started to do the LBRP myself, I completely understood the value of the ritual itself, and therefore I understood you are insane to think that you can just pick and choose a bit of the ritual thinking that that's gonna do anything at all. It's just, I cannot stress enough how dangerous that was. And we were lucky probably, but it was really, really uncomfortable. I think especially at the beginning, a lot of people make a point to beginner witches do protections, because the moment that you start doing magic, you become this beam of light that lights up in the ethereal world, and spirits of any kind will notice that and will come snoop around because, ooh, who's this new thing that is doing magic? And I am a very relaxed person, and I always had this perception of, why would anybody bother with me? Come on! And after that experience, I sort of realized, and it's not to scare anyone, because it can be very, very simple to create a protected space. You either envision the circle or you go around with incense and then you go east to south to west to north, calling spirits, ancestors and guardians of the watchtower of the eastern air, please join me, enhance and protect my magic. Simple as that. You go around, when you cast a circle, you go counterclockwise, so north, west, south and east. Same way, spirits, guardians and ancestors of the north and earth, thank you for protecting and enhancing my magic, you can go in peace. And you go it counterclockwise and that's done. Or you do a proper LBRP before and after your spell. The LBRP, in my understanding, doesn't exactly cast a circle, but because at that point you have invoked the angels properly, they're gonna be there until they dissipate for a while. It's a more relaxed way in a sense, because you don't have a boundary as much. I feel more comfortable in even like moving in and out of the space that I've done the LBRP, because I feel like the LBRP cleanses my house rather than just specifically a space. And that's why I do that, and then I call upon my deities and ancestors, and then I do a spell, and then if I really want to go overboard and I have the energy, I do another LBRP to cleanse again. But otherwise, the LBRP, I have the perception that it dissipates, and it's more relaxed in a way, because you don't have to undo the circle. On the other hand, it costs a lot of energy to do, so it's a give and take. But you need to understand, again, the context that certain invocations are within. And for Sky Alexander to just put the throwaway line, oh, just call the angels, before me, behind me, no, that's very irresponsible. And you're basically telling a beginner to cast a spell in a circle or in a space that is not protected. It's also safe to assume that if they're trying a spell for the first time, they might not know enough to have already protected or warded their house, which was exactly my case at the time. So don't say that. Don't do that. And since that book is already written, just don't trust that. Go trust other things, not that. I very, very, very much look forward to hearing what my other fellow witchtubers have to share about the books that they found satisfies them and give them all they need. They would snog them. The books that they keep going back to, marry. And the books that are actually problematic and people need to be warned about. So let's text them. I know that I've had a brief chat with AB Witch Journal, and they were mentioning that they would be interested in doing that. So I know that a few creators might be interested. I do look forward to hearing everything that you have to say, all the tea about all the books, adding books to my reading lists, and also know that maybe there are books that are not worth going there. I trust you. So let me know what you think it's worth sharing. And until the next video, I really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because there is need for it.